and actually carried out a global survey. And with global survey, interviewing not Tesla customers, but like, for example, just the normal population, and then started to understand how do they actually perceive the brand Tesla. And what we found was that there were three main points.
I'm your host Vishesh, building Neo, voice control for your entire computer. No typing, no clicking. Curious? Check out vishesh.space. I am joined today by Peter Grafe, founder at BlueAlpha, the AI native performance marketing hub. A data scientist who built Tesla's marketing measurement framework from the ground up, he discovered the industry had solved the wrong problem and left to fix it. BlueAlpha helps growth stage companies close the gap between measurement insights and the decisions that actually move the needle. Hey, hi Peter. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for the invite. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. I would first like to thank Scott Persinger from BizTrip AI who introduced us. He's been a guest before, and we chat on and off. And so good of him to actually make that intro.
Yeah, fun fact, we actually, we used to be in the same office, right? In the same
Really?
co-working space, yeah. And we moved out since then, and I just invited him to our office party, which is happening end of this month. Yeah.
So you met him at the co-working space, or did you know him from before?
No, I met him at a co-working space well, the concept is pretty cool because it's called Frontier Tower in San Francisco, and it's an old WeWork, and they bought the entire tower, and they turned it almost into a vertical village where every floor had like a specific theme. And then you had like an AI floor, a robotics floor, biohacking, growth hacking, like maker space. And then also you had on the third floor, like these office cubes, where you it's not co-working, but it's like shared offices all on the same floor, like WeWork style. And we had like 2 cubes down there, and Scott also had a cube, and that's how we met, because we're actually the first 3 office or the companies that moved into that place. So we're like the OGs, and now the OGs graduated out of the place, and we're moving out, and I think they're moving out in in a month. Yeah.
Nice, cool. New offices, nice.
New offices.
I read somewhere you spent some time in Leuven as well. Leuven in Belgium.
Well, I did write my master thesis in the company at a company that was based in Leuven. I was in Rotterdam. Yeah. So during my master's, which was data science master's, first data science master's they actually ever did at Erasmus University, was like the first cohort. I had to write our thesis tied with an internship, right? So when this mandate was basically set by our university, or a program manager was like, hey, you need to have an internship, and with that internship you need to write your thesis, which I loved because it was practical and you could actually apply stuff. I started to apply a bunch of different companies and actually got an internship at Tesla, and I was like, Tesla, pretty cool, not bad. And then I was under the impression that I could write my thesis at Tesla. And after I got the internship, they basically told me no, you cannot. So then I was a bit bit of a situation, because I still had to have a thesis internship, right?
Right.
But Tesla was because of data privacy and regulations, all that kind of stuff, it will be very hard to do that. And then I was like, well, I don't want to give up the internship at Tesla. So I actually took a second internship while I still had university, courses, plus the Tesla internship to actually fulfill my master's, the master's thesis internship. And it was definitely crunch time. I would be lying if I did an incredible job in my master thesis, because I didn't, and at some point it was clear that I would get hired by Tesla. And then the master's degree just became more secondary, right? And Tesla moved into the focus. But I wrote my thesis on multiple sclerosis, and whether you can start to simulate actually certain treatment effects. And it's interesting. Yeah, but it was crunch time.
Yeah, I don't know how much time you got to spend in Leuven. It's an interesting town. Surprisingly, I've spent some time in Leuven as well. Out of
Really?
all places, we had one customer based out of Leuven, and so the first trip I actually stayed in Leuven, and then I realized this is not a town to stay in. And so the next trip I actually commuted.
Yeah.
Interesting place. You spent some time there or no?
No. I was actually still in Rotterdam, but the company Ecometrics that I just like did the internship with was based in, or wrote the thesis with, that provided the data, right, was based in Belgium. But unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, I never made it actually to Leuven.
It's a nice, quaint little university town, but yeah, it can get boring. Yeah. So
I don't know
moving
how
on
big the
to
Belgium viewership is, that you may be upset now.
probably very little, but I mean, I love the country. I've been there multiple times, so
Mm.
no hard feelings, Belgium. So you spent 4 years building measurement systems at Tesla that no one outside the company ever saw, right? And at what point did you realize you were sitting on something you could commercialize?
Yeah, so the journey is actually, it wasn't like 4 years building marketing measurement systems. So I started as a data scientist at Tesla, and I was in the centralized data science team that was serving all of the EMEA countries
Mhm.
with dashboarding, reporting, data analysis, but also like data science models, like for example, predicting what kind of clients are going to convert from a lead to an actual order. Or once we started to deliver cars, can we actually start to predict cancellations and deliveries? Because if we would have known beforehand that a customer is not going to take delivery of a car, there was like a whole chain of events, right? Because you schedule the appointment, and then if they, for example, like cancel right before, then we almost have like a drop of like a couple days where we need to like schedule someone else to pick up their car. And at Tesla, we're like end of the quarter was like crunch time because we wanted to beat like our previous record in deliveries like every single time. That kind of information was super crucial. I've done a lot of topic classification as well, where
Mm.
we scraped external forums, find them with like internal survey data, especially like open questions of like, hey, why did you churn? Why did you like leave the brand? All that kind of stuff. And this was like very early when ChatGPT just came out, and topic classification was like the main the main application for these type of things. Found some pretty interesting insights that help, for example, shape the roadmap for the autopilot team in terms of like what kind of features we actually had to prioritize, or what kind of problems like users found, as well as just helping us understand how, and this was particularly in the European market, people thought about the brand Tesla and what was like the purchasing discovery process and what was like top of mind, like for example, range anxiety or how to properly charge your battery. And that all of these insights were then actually like incorporated in our sales advisors like sales flow to give them the right tools at the end that they can actually like bring this up when talking to clients. So this was me working in this data analytics and data science team in Amsterdam. And then a time came where Tesla went from how Tesla builds cars, maybe it's just like some background information, is like if you go to BMW and you say, I want to order this car, they build that one car. So the thing is, you put an order in and that car is then being manufactured. Tesla does not work like this. Tesla builds cars that are then being matched to orders, right? So it's like a supply and demand equation. And there's like
Mm.
a whole demand, or like demand forecast, and the whole supply forecast, right? And when I joined, which was in 2021, Tesla only had limited supply, and halfway through the quarter was already like sold out, right?
Mm.
So there was actually too little supply for too much demand, and people had to wait quite some time for their cars, not because they still had to be like, not because their order didn't exist, but because there was simply like no supply. And then what then
Mm.
happened was obviously the gigafactories, and we also had Giga Berlin, right? That like big gigafactory in Berlin started to ramp up and started to produce a lot of more cars. And the demand did increase, but just didn't increase as strongly, for example, as the supply. And then all of a
Mm.
sudden we found ourselves in a bit of a demand gap
So,
situation, where we had a lot of cars on the ground at the end of the quarter that were not delivered, which you don't want, because these cars just like sit there and then you need to pay like parking costs and all that kind of stuff. And Tesla obviously kept continuously shipping new updates, new like versions of the models as well. So we had to like get rid of them. To look for new alternatives of like growth, right? Like what else can we do?
right.
And the topic marketing kept coming up, but was like was almost like a taboo, because like Elon very famously says, if you just build an incredibly great product, you don't need, like, for example, marketing. And
Right.
that statement by itself is partially true, because I think you need to build an incredible product. And to this day, I believe like Teslas are like such an amazing product also for the price that you get. And at any given point in time, I would choose a Tesla over even a BMW or Mercedes. And now probably the German viewership is going to be on me. But this is just what I actually believe. I truly believe in the product. But at the same time, you also need to have publicity, or like that people need to be aware of your brand so they actually like buy it. And Elon is just an incredible marketer by himself.
Right.
Of like, everyone knows the brand Tesla. Do you know the CEO of BMW or Mercedes or Volkswagen?
No.
Like, I don't, right? Like, so the thing is, it's like he was just such a polarizing figure that went from he's going to like save the world with sustainability, that during COVID, that entire image obviously like shifted, which actually had an impact on sales and deliveries, in particular in EMEA and also the US. So we were faced with this problem of like, how can we accelerate demand, and actually carried out a global survey. And with global survey, interviewing not Tesla customers, but like, for example, just the normal population,
Hmm.
and then started to understand how do they actually perceive the brand Tesla. And what we found was that there were three main points that were completely, or three main core beliefs that were completely different from what the product was actually standing for. And these boiled down to like pricing, which is ultimately affordability, right? Safety, and also usability of the product.
Hmm.
And there was this belief that Teslas are still these like super high and expensive cars, which is like not true, right? Like, you can buy a Model 3 now for low 30s, which is, it's
Right.
not cheap, but it's definitely an affordable car. And it's not
Yeah, it's
like,
not premium. Yeah.
it's not premium, right? It's not a $70,000 or $80,000 or $100,000 car. It's a very affordable model. And then the second misconception was safety. And people thought that Teslas are still these like unsafe cars, because like during that time there was a lot of there were recalls that actually happened to every single car manufacturer as well, right? And there was also all these like videos of burning batteries, and people actually had a feeling that Teslas are not safe, which is like completely false. Like, the Model Y is one of the safest cars in the world, period, full stop. Like, it's just like huge misconception. It was actually, I think, crowned in 2020 as like literally the safest car. And then the last
Hmm.
point was more usability and product experience of like, oh my God, there's so much tech, and actually no one knows how to use it.
Hmm.
And once you actually have driven a Tesla, it's incredibly intuitive. And this goes back to the point that I will actually want to choose a Tesla over a Mercedes or a BMW, because the tech, for example, within the cars is just not as good as a Tesla car. And the feeling itself of driving a Tesla is also incredible, and it has come a long way. So we were faced with these like three misconceptions. And then I was like, what can we do in order to bridge the conception of like, or a misconception, for example, of like that people thought about Tesla.
I think I lost
And
you.
ultimately we landed on paid media. Paid media is incredible because this is like a very easy way on how you can like push a certain narrative on other people at scale.
Right.
And then obviously it's kind of was a direct clash with Elon hates paid media. As he like very famously says, that Tesla is never going to do like paid media, it doesn't work, all that kind of stuff. Interestingly, at the same time, or actually like before that, like while we were like going through this process, another Elon company, which is like SpaceX and Starlink, actually started to already experience with paid media and started to see some success with it. And we actually used that to also start this initiative of like, let's get a growth team at Tesla, which ultimately meant like, we're going to run ads at Tesla, which was super slippery slope. It was like, we got to be super careful with like the creative that we put out. And most importantly, can we prove impact of everything that we do, and every single dollar that we deploy needs to yield like incremental value, right? And incremental value meaning we need to achieve something net new which didn't exist before, right? Like get more leads into the funnel that then actually convert into gross orders. And we put together this task team, and I was asked whether I want to lead the marketing data science team, which ultimately meant answering the question, does this work, right? And can
Right.
we prove that this works? And I say lead the team, it was actually just me. It's like typical Tesla fashion, just like we'll put one person in there and see how it goes. And again, had no marketing background actually before that. And this was like year 3 of my like Tesla journey of like 4 years. And very quickly realized that everything that was going on in like marketing in terms of like measurement and how to attribute and how to actually like count orders was just like wrong. Right. And there was this one very specific, like one very concrete example is where we launched our first campaign in, I believe it was Texas, and it was like YouTube and search. And search campaigns are like, if you now go on and click buy a BMW, for example, you see like a sponsored ads, right? That's a search campaign. And our Google reps told us like, oh, Google search, like the sponsored search is like so incremental and you're getting such a cheap cost. You should put more money there. And I was like, hold up, stop. Like, how do you prove this? First of all, like, can you prove this? And the answer was very unsatisfactory. And they basically couldn't explain to me why I should believe their results, right? And then combined with the fact that Tesla is such a well-known brand, we actually had the internal belief that search might not be incremental at all. And just because people are looking for Tesla anyways, and they see our sponsored ad and they click on it, right? So the conversion would have happened regardless, but we didn't have a way to actually prove it. And that's ultimately what I then ended up doing, is that I built the entire like marketing measurement framework, which are like a lot of data science and machine learning models that we've deployed in EMEA, APAC, and North America to actually flesh out what is the true incremental value that each of these campaigns add, right? This was the first step. And what we found with this particular campaign was actually that search was not incremental at all, and YouTube was the main driver, right? All the YouTube advertisement that we put out, but no one clicked on the YouTube advertisement, so you couldn't like track it, because when was the last time you clicked on a YouTube advertisement, right? But people saw the ad and then went online, searched, saw Tesla, clicked on the search sponsored ad, and that's why it got attributed to this, even though this was actually not the source, but the source was YouTube, and we're able to show that YouTube was actually driving most of it. And this then laid the foundation that actually also started to build trust with our like leadership and finance team to actually start giving us more money, right? And based on this like measurement system that I basically built for Tesla. And then, so this is like the origin story of like how I got pushed into marketing and how we realized that there is actually like a problem in the market, which is like an attribution problem at first, but ultimately the bigger problem that sits on top is like almost a decision-making problem of what to actually do with these insights that you generate that need to be passed on to the marketing team, and that there's like too many fragmented tools that you actually need to stitch together.
Interesting. And so how did you end up tracking people who are just seeing ads? Was it a survey or?
Yeah, so ultimately there's like 2 concepts, data science concept that we used. The first one is called a marketing mix model, which basically is a probabilistic model where you can infuse every single data signal into, right? And then you have one KPI that you actually you have one outcome that you want to measure the impact on. Like in this outcome could be number of sales created in this company from your first party data, right? So that's a marketing mix model. And the difference of that approach is that if you go to, for example, Google, or go to a Meta, or go to a TikTok or a Snapchat or an X or whatever, they all have their own systems on how they measure impact, right? And what then happens is, if you see an Instagram ad, you click on it, right? You go to the website, you don't do anything. But then you come back and you search for it and you click on a Google ad and then you buy. All of a sudden, Google says credit to me, Meta says credit to me. And if you look at the both platforms, you see like, oh, I got 2 orders, but then you check your actual order base and it's like 1. Right? So 1, right? And that problem we solve by just looking at your, like, what is your first party data? Was the true source of truth of like, how many orders did you get? And then look at how much money have you spent over time? How many clicks, views, and impressions have you generated over time? Have you created variance? And what is the impact of, for example, pulling up or pulling down a specific channel on your first party data, and then using that as attribution? And that's ultimately the marketing mix model. This is like one concept. And the second concept is called incrementality testing, which is, do you know what an A/B test is? right? So you
Yeah,
have like, yeah, it's like, think about it as an A/B test, but an A/B test on a location level, where instead of saying you have two populations and you randomize half, or like randomize sample of half of the population, for example, experiences the treatment and the other half doesn't. Now you actually do that more on a geo level, for example, breaking it down by states, where you can say, I am only showing YouTube ads in California, and I'm
Mm,
using all the other states to actually build a counterfactual. And again, you apply a machine learning model, which is like, at the end of the day, everything is a regression to some degree, right? Like you
right.
have a machine learning model that then starts to assign like certain weights to build actually a counterfactual that mimics the sales, for example, of California. But then you don't show anything there, and then you can actually compare over time. Now I'm doing something else in California, and now if the other states have built this counterfactual, is there an uplift, yes or no?
So just like an A/B test, you do A there and B somewhere
Yes,
else, and
exactly.
then kind of compare. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, just that B usually is don't change business as usual, right? And like A is usually you apply a treatment of like spending more, spending less. Yeah.
And so while you were building this at Tesla, one of the advantages you probably had is, massive first party data, a brand that generates organic demand without advertising, and a budget of, I don't know what the budget was like, but I'm assuming it's going to be millions. What actually breaks when you lose all that infra? So you don't have access to that. Do your customers have the same parity in terms of the breadth of data, first party data that you had access to at Tesla? And if not, what breaks?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think the we actually didn't use user level data at Tesla, right? The thing is, we're interested in
Hmm.
aggregated data of like over time, where and what. You know what I mean? Over time, so when, for example, 13th of May, 2026, in San Francisco, X amount of orders. So that level of aggregation you actually find in almost every other company as well. Deciding factor was like, how much volume do you actually see? Because we need some level of volume in our like metric that we want to measure in order to get convergence of the models, right? But the volume doesn't have to be 20,000 or 10,000. Like it's enough, for example, to have 500 conversions per week, or like, and then have like something around like 2,000 conversions, for example, per month, or even lower, you have 1,000 conversions per month. Also still works to actually get like a strong model that can give you an insight. So, and Tesla obviously had a lot of data and a great distribution, and that doesn't actually prevent you from like successfully deploying these models and starting to like generating insights and actions out of it. What scale gives you, it gives you a larger playing field to test multiple things all at once. And if
Right.
you just have like less volume, it's just like you gotta have almost place bets sequentially after each other, and then you measure. At Tesla, for example, we were running like 40 different tests all at the same time, and it was just possible because we could, like, we just had enough volume also as we started to break down our different locations, in order to get actually statistical significance.
So time to an experiment probably gets elongated, and that in turn probably limits the progress because you can't run enough experiments.
Yes, for example, but I think these two things also go in tandem, because if you're early, you haven't made enough, like you didn't have enough time to make a lot of mistakes, you know what I mean? And like
Right.
have a lot of inefficient spend. So working together with us is also very easy of like, hey, this is how we should actually plan. This is how we launch a channel. That's how we make sure it works. Once it works, you lock it in, and then you like grow, right? Or
Right.
is the other play is like you are actually a very established player, and then we usually enter and we're like, okay, there's like inefficiency happening here, here, here. Let's start to reduce this, and then start from here and then build it up again, right? So the thing is, it's like it's almost like a misconception that these models that we've built at Tesla are only reserved to like the Fortune 500 companies, right? And like startups, for example, like our ICP starts as like a Series B startup that, for example, we start to serve with our tools that have like high growth and still want to understand what is working and what is not working.
Maybe this is a good time to take a pause and talk about what you guys do. What's a crisp definition or an elevator pitch for how you help your customers?
So what we're ultimately doing is we're building the marketing org of 2050, right? And that marketing organization of 2050 is agent-led growth. So you have multiple agents that all perform specific tasks, but you have human-led strategy. And that interplay is actually very important, because what AI has done an incredible job is it has like flatline, for example, how fast you ship, how quickly you can surface, for example, insights as well, right? But it still needs context, and it still needs domain expertise, and it still needs strategy. And the strategy part is very often still sits within the human, right? Or needs to be extracted out of the human into the system to then perform an action or an execution. And in particular, if you look at marketing agencies right now and like how they've developed, is that previously there was a lot of fragmentation, across the different like platforms. And that's where the moat that agencies actually had was the execution and the allocation of resources across all of these different fragmented pieces. That fragmentation doesn't exist anymore because data availability is great and AI actually like closed that bridge, right? So now the real moat is intelligence paired with like having a machine that can actually execute in real time for you. And that's ultimately what we're building at BlueAlpha, which is the future marketing org of like 2050, where we are starting we're starting with performance marketing, and performance marketing means everything where you spend money on like platforms in order to generate more money, right? And this can be billboards that you see out of home. This can be your TikTok campaign. This goes to your YouTube campaign, or if you buy linear TV or like connected TV spots, for example. So everything where you just spend money on. We actually have in total 7 agents that start to like cover the entire like marketing stack across like planning, budget allocation, creative execution, testing, competitive insights actually, right? So competitive insights. And on top of it is still the human that actually uses all of these agents to surface information and then infuse it with context in order to actually like implement. And you can call it almost like AI native service of like having this like base of agents that perform intelligence for you that then the humans uses in order to make like faster decisions better. Yeah.
So it's not just measurement, you also help with creatives as well. So the entire stack pretty much.
Yeah. So on creative is what we don't tell you this is how your creative should look like. So we're not a creative asset creation company. But what we do is companies have like thousands of creatives that all run, right? And they're like embedded into the campaigns. What often happens are like concepts like creative fatigue. And what that means is you had an ad running too long in a specific campaign, and how often people are watching it and how people are responding, and starts to go down, right? And this is a concept that is called a click-through rate, for example, right? How many people are actually watching the ads until the end? It might start at 10%, and then at some point it drops down to 2. And then if it starts to drop down to 2, what we usually see is that the cost that you incur for like driving more impressions, for example, actually starts to go up. And the platforms don't tell you that this is happening, right? Because they
And
obviously still want to spend money. So there's like this huge wasted effort of like, or wasted money problem happening of people spending money on ads that don't work. And what our creative agents do is they run actually every single day, and they start to flag these things proactively to help you understand, okay, I actually need to start to create my, I need to rotate my creative. That's the first step. And then the second step is that you can start to cross-reference this across like different platforms, because sometimes you use the same creative. And then ultimately the last step is to start to analyze what are the hooks, what are the messaging, how do they work, right? But it's still surfacing information, and we're not like a creative agency and so on that actually starts to produce the creative. We're like the information intelligence layer that surfaces all of these insights that then gets passed on, for example, to a platform or an agency that actually uses those to create better creatives.
interesting.
And same
And so
for competitor intelligence, for example, right? Like understanding where your competitors are, what channels are they on, and so on.
is there any third party data available on competitors?
Yeah, a lot. So, for example, Google and Meta have ad transparency libraries. And what that means is every single ad that is aired is uploaded there. You don't know how many clicks, views, impressions they got. You don't know how much money they spent, but you know what someone uploaded when, right? And you also know how long it actually like stayed up there, and you also understand what is the messaging, what is the content, like how do they position themselves. And for these, you just can connect to them via API, for example, and you can start to like pull that data in and then start to compare certain things. And then there's other websites that are called like built with, for example, where you can actually, that scrapes the entire HTML stack of your website. And a lot of times when you store, for example, launch a new channel, you install pixels, right? Like for example, Meta works with a pixel that is installed on your website to help them with their own algorithm to, like, for example, increase conversion tracking to do better targeting. So you can actually like use websites like this to understand how does the marketing stack look like of a specific company, and then compare that to like your own company. And based on this can actually build quite some competitive intelligence just with like publicly available data. Yeah.
And this library that you spoke about, the transparency library, is it just a library or do they have a like a GUI version or a UI version?
Well, it is a UI version.
It is a
It
UI
is,
version.
yeah. If you Google right now, Google Ads library, like Google Ads Transparency Center, you can Google, like you can hand search for your own campaigns or competitors. Yeah. And I think the is like these 7 agents that together actually make the solution round, right? And like you have companies that only do competitive intelligence, but only competitive intelligence doesn't help you as much because it's just like one part ripped almost out of context, right? Same with creative fatigue. I start to know like these creatives are starting to like fatigue and I need to rotate them. But what you actually need is on top, you need the umbrella, which is the measurement system, which we actually built first, where every signal that you get, you can actually like route through that system to get to understand, is this moving the needle for me, yes or no? And if you don't have that umbrella, all of the rest doesn't matter. And same with like content optimization. What are we optimizing content for? Like, how do you understand whether this is actually working or not? Right? So the thing is, it's almost like you start with the umbrella, which is the measurement, which is like holistic across every single channel. And that's why we built first, also like obviously at Tesla. And then you start to like push deeper down of now going into like, okay, creative signals, you need a signal here, you need to understand what creative fatigue means. Boom, you got an agent. Same on competitive intelligence, right? Same on just like what is happening on the platforms. We have like a reporting agent. That's the 7 agent, actually, the just general reporting agent. And then all of this comes together, plus a planning agent that actually helps you now understand what is everything that I've done and how does the future look like, all in one tool, right? Paired with like our service as well that we bring to our customers to actually deliver the full end-to-end stack solution for performance marketing.
Yeah, that's an interesting solution. You wrote that, you know, the triple M, or the, what did you call it, marketing mix model,
Marketing mix, media mix model. Yeah.
and the incremental testing.
Hmm.
Can it tell you what to do next? The industry has been selling measurement as the answer for over a decade now. Um, like, can you walk me through a specific moment you realized the problem wasn't measurement?
Yes.
And if not measurement, what was the problem?
Yeah. So this is a great question. So measurement is part of the problem, but not the full solution, right? And
Right.
in particular, and a very concrete example is the insight that you will get out of our models is you should spend more money on Meta, right? Or you should spend more money on Meta campaigns that prospect for new people.
Hmm.
That insight by itself, you can actually not action on because it doesn't tell you which campaign do I need to fix, which campaign do I need to spend more. Is my creative working, yes or no, right? These are all like the measurement models that we built, they don't answer that because they're like statistical probabilistic models that need a certain level of aggregation to actually like work, because I need to have continuous inputs over time in order to get a read. Spend that turns on and is on for 4 weeks, then gets turned off, and then I have another spend bucket. No model will actually be able to give you a read on this. So that's where we need to have like some level of aggregation. And when we first started out, and I also realized this already at Tesla, was the insights that I was like surfacing, the marketing team looked at me and was like, okay, what do I do with this now? And we actually had to build a decision-making algorithm on top of this that took the insights, but then transformed it into something that the marketing team could actually understand. And this is this like measurement to action gap where I think most of the companies break these days still, because everyone has a measurement provider, but no one actually acts on their measurement insights because they just don't understand what to actually do with it, right? So, and I already understood this at Tesla, and it was as simple as we're measuring incrementality, and if we don't see incrementality after 2 weeks, we're cutting the campaign. Done. You know what I mean? Like we're cutting everything in that campaign. Or we have a certain goal that we want to hit in terms of like customer acquisition cost. If we're below that customer acquisition cost with our measurement, we're increasing spend until we're hitting that target, right? And once we hit that target, we leave it, and then we leave it, and then we had like a retest cycle, for example, after like 4 or 5 months. And it sounds simple, and it is, and it was on purpose, right? But it's just starting to get actually like decision-making frameworks in place that everyone starts to follow, because only then you can actually start to understand what is working, what is not working. And then of course it's an evolving process of starting to fine-tune this. But what we see a lot with people right now is they start something, after a week, they start to freak out because like stuff is not like looking how they're like how they thought it would look like, and they just kill everything again, right? And this is like not a process how you can actually build continuously learning and continuous decision making, because in marketing, you need to let some time pass in order to actually get a full read, right? So for example, if you turn on a new campaign, you cannot expect that within a week your entire like that you just generated 100% more sales, right? Depending on what campaign you launched, how you launched it, these things need time, and we're talking about weeks, right? Like usually 3 to 4, maybe 4 to 5 weeks, something like this. And what often happens now in marketing is that people start to freak out almost and start to question everything and then turn everything off again, which is actually the complete opposite of like, let's learn over time. Let the campaigns and the platforms, they have learning algorithms, which also take time, right? And then also the models also need to learn over time. So it's like almost trust the process, right? Have very clearly said what do you want to achieve and where, like what is your like CAC measurements, what is your thresholds, and then actually like run the test until the end. Use the insights that you get, the insights and learnings that you get to then make a better decision, for example, if the next test that you run.
Right. You need to have some sizable spend to get quality data to make decisions.
Exactly. And also sizable spend over time, right? Yeah.
You're saying measurement isn't even the hard problem, like you said. Why has acting on the measurement been so hard?
Because
And
sorry.
how does
Go ahead.
how the decisions you recommend are easier to act on?
So measurement is hard, right? Like measurement getting right is hard by itself, but then making them actionable is even like harder. I think it's just because the models that we've built are data science model, and these are data science outputs that don't fit into a marketing, like historic marketing world, right? It's just a different language that you basically speak. And the trick is to how do we turn this insight into a language that, for example, everyone understands. And there's like 2 paths to this. There's AI is doing an incredible job at that, right? Like take this insight, explain it to me so that I understand it. Explain it to me like I'm 5, right? Explain it to me like I'm a marketer, right? Like, for example, like these are incredible applications for AI. So this is an incredible bridge. And then the other bridge is just general education of like, this is a new system and this is how we actually like start to implement it, and having good systems in place on how to actually like build trust and educate people so that at some point they can do it themselves. And that's ultimately also the AI native service part, right? Of like, you have all the tools, you have all the insights. Now it's about going out there and also like explaining to your customers how this works, right? I think another thing, which is that, what you just mentioned this right now, is there's too many dashboards. No one acts on dashboards. You know what we actually believe? And the BlueAlpha platform is also built in such a way. Every single agent is an MCP, right? A model context protocol from Anthropic. And that MCP, you can actually load into your Claude, into your Codex, into your like favorite AI workspace. Because we truly believe that in particular Claude and Codex will be like the future workspaces of people, right? I start my day in Claude, right? Not everyone does it right now, but you will start to feel like over time there will be such a high adoption, for example, that people will do, like if they wake up and Google something, for example, now you're going to like Cloud and search for something within like your chat bar. And what we want to achieve is that you can chat with all of the insights that we generate also within Claude, right? But then what actually stays on the platform side is almost like system of record and planning and strategy. And you want to actually be able to push back information in your workspace back into the BlueAlpha platform. So it's not just a quote unquote like normal MCP, which usually is always just to like retrieve like or pull data or read data. It's actually bidirectional that you can write as well, right? And the MCPs that we're building is you can do your work in Claude, you put together an analysis, but now you want to find consensus with your leadership and start executing it. We actually push it to the BlueAlpha platform into the planning module where it starts to create a proposal that says, Peter put together this proposal on how to like fix Google Ads. You sit together with your management, you iterate on it, and then you can click execution. And the execution is also automated because you're like connected to all the ad platforms. And then you can start to track it. And I think it's interesting that everyone was competing about, oh, we're building the operating system for humans. I think it's actually wrong. I think you need to start thinking about how to build the operating system for agents, because if the operating system for a human is like Claude, it's more about like how do you do agent to agent communication, and that's ultimately where we believe also is the future.
There was a time where people were talking about being an API first company and so on, and now we've reached being an MCP first company. Switching gears, your co-founders are both ex-Tesla data scientists. At some point, you had to build a sales function. What did you get wrong the first time?
I think, what do we get wrong? A lot of things, I think it was a lot, of course, how to run. I think how to actually run an actual sales call, right? Like what are the things, how do you qualify a lead? I think a lot of mistakes are being made is like sales is actually less talking and more listening, like truly understanding what the pain points are of the people that you like talk to. I think that has been a big learning. And then just generally, sometimes you think people are, and it's never closed. It's closed when it's signed. You know what I mean? Like, and people can say whatever they want until it's not signed, it's not closed, And I think hiring mistakes, of just hiring people that for sales positions that weren't a good fit. I think those were, I would say, like, if you like talk about painful, because there's like obviously monetary value like attached to it. I do sales. Stefan is like our CTO and does product. Incredibly smart guy. You should also have him on. And you can go like very, very technical also to like the individual AI system, because we're obviously just scratching them like very high level. But for me, the biggest learnings in sales were it's really hard work, and you really need to crunch, especially in the beginning when no one knows you. You need to find your wedge in. It's like how to run an actual sales call, and then ultimately how to build a go-to-market function, right? And on go-to-market, this varies also by industry that everyone is in. But in marketing, there's a lot of noise, because everyone tells you that they know everything and they can do everything, right? Because like it's just that doesn't probably happen in robotics, right? But like this is just like what the problem is more in marketing. There's like too much noise, and for someone to actually that is in the market, it's very hard to understand what is actually like true and what is not true. And I think the hardest things that we had to figure out is what is that go-to-market motion to break through the noise. And what we just found to be the most successful is there's obviously certain signals when people are like more ready to buy, right? Whether this is funding, whether this is someone took a new job, this is trial and error basically of like figuring out what works for you. But then what we found out worked the best for us is like leading with a lot of upfront value to actually like build trust, right? And that could be, for example, competitive intelligence, because most of the data is like publicly available, or you need to like connect to APIs and starting to like create benchmark reports, comparison charts, and just like leading with value first of helping clients understand like we actually know how your business works without ever having worked with you, and then starting to like, for example, ease in. And the Tesla background helps. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people don't like Elon and then it doesn't help.
Yeah.
But like usually this is also like a strong social proof sign, that helps. It plays in our favor that we actually are not, the term industry blind. If you like spend a lot of time, for example, in marketing, sometimes it's like, okay, we approach things very differently from like first principles, because marketing has not been like fully our background. And actually marketing is also a huge data science problem at the end of the day, because it's like causal inference. You know what I mean? It's like art and science, right? But like the science part is like pretty big. So it's like data science. But like, I think those have been the hardest things, and yeah, we're still crunching it out, and I think there's also like other challenges that will await us on our journey that we still need to conquer.
And so, is this your first time selling?
Yes, I did not sell before, but to quote my dad always tells me that I could sell an Eskimo bridge. No. So maybe I was, yeah, I think also selling it's almost an art, of a lot of conviction and like very deep knowledge in the product that you like sell, right? And you need to be like fully convinced that this is the right thing, and you really need to live it. That's what we do. We're living it, you know?
Yeah.
And then I think shaping the edges is just like, again, how do you run a sales call? Like what are the things, how to qualify a lead, how to follow up, what are best practices there?
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned about intent signals. Is there anything specific you're using for getting those intent signals for yourself? Like what kind of tools
Yeah.
have worked for you to identify those intent signals?
I mean, we have, yeah, I love talking about this. So we have a 2x2 matrix in our, which is like ranked by awareness and intent. And we use HeyReach for LinkedIn automation. We obviously run LinkedIn ads. We run Google ads as well. Then we have a newsletter. We send outbound emails as well. We post every single day on LinkedIn as well. Did I miss something? We also have a physical product that we send out. We have our own creatine gummies. We designed our own creatine gummies because they give marketers power. So we also sent these out to like high value prospects, and all of that ties back to HubSpot, right? Our CRM, and we track everything, right? So the thing is, if you send an email, someone clicks on the email, they go to our website, they reveal themselves, and we actually understand what they do on our website. And that then starts to trigger, for example, a ranking of scoring on like awareness and intent, depending on which sites they visit, to then get enrolled in like LinkedIn ads to stay like top of mind, or trigger personalized outreach of, hey, you visited a case study of ours and you went to our product tour. I actually know who you are. Let me write you a personalized email of like, is there anything you want to jump on a call, for example, or lead with additional value that we've created from some of our benchmark reports, for example, to then get the call in. And that works well. But it's like a whole go-to-market system that we've built in the background.
And you said you have your own gummies,
Yes.
like sugar gummies.
Yeah, no, those are our creatine gummies.
Oh, that is interesting.
So we shipped our own creatine gummies.
That's
Your blue
nice.
boosts grow harder.
Yes,
So this is like a wordplay, because it's like tastes like growth, and it's MMM as well. Um,
that's a good one.
and we have 1,000 pouches. We have 1,000 pouches. Yeah.
For people listening in audio, you probably need to see the video for this to make
They
sense.
do need to see the video.
Interesting. And so like you ship them to people who like as a cold outreach, or people
So
who've already
it's well, first you need an address, and you need to understand that they also are like in
physical.
that location, physical, which is not always the case, because like now with remote work, a lot of people are just remote. But we find the addresses of people that we had usually calls with, and then we send it, for example, to them. And we actually had deals closed because of that. So the thing is, it actually does work because it's just different. And then you all of a sudden have like, for example, BlueAlpha gummies in your office, which is like,
Yeah, I like the whole MMM and then the packaging itself is blue.
yeah, it is blue.
How did you come up with the name Blue Alpha?
We initially wanted a different name, which
Hmm.
cost too much money because the domain was like 40K. And then alpha is the constant in a regression. And our like data science models are ultimately a lot of like simulations, Monte Carlo simulations, and also regressions. And then alpha also is money in finance, right?
Yeah.
And then blue is just a very trustworthy and calm color. And then it was just bluealpha.ai.
That's interesting.
And I like blue.
Blue is a nice color. I like blue too. And what about creatine? How did you come up with that as a gummy?
So creatine, because first of all, it gives you strength. And then second of, there's been studies, right, that also increases your cognitive behavior.
Hmm.
And when companies start working with us, we help them to optimize their entire marketing mix, make better decisions, and ultimately create more revenue, right? So it was like a good supplement to actually like associate the brand with. Yeah, to push creatine. Yeah.
Interesting story. Very interesting story. A lot of people come up with these merch, but I think if a merch has a story, yeah, that takes
And
it to
a lot of people have like merch like cups or
yeah,
t-shirts, right?
coasters. Yeah.
I didn't or post, yeah, exactly, right? Or like linears or something like this. And I didn't want, it's very generic, so I wanted something else. And we actually saw competitors doing the same stuff that we started to do, like literally crazy. Like competitors are way bigger than us, started copying us. Like not even like trying to like use something else. It was literally just like copy paste. Yeah.
Right. We have reached what I call never get a cold email round, which is questions that will help probably listeners get to know you better.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest lesson so far in the journey
Of
as a
building the
founder?
startup as a
Yeah.
founder, hire the right people.
Hmm.
Hiring the right people is, I think, everything. It's not everything, but it's like a big chunk of it because you cannot do it all alone.
Yeah.
And I think having an incredibly good team around you, first of all, makes the entire journey so much nicer because you actually like working with people that you like
Enjoy work.
admire to a certain degree as well, right? And that you like build great stuff with, but also like makes it so much faster. This is just me coming from a more like data science and statistical background. Storytelling matters a lot.
Hmm.
Matters like more than you actually think, especially if you want to raise money.
Right.
Yeah, and no, I think those are the two biggest learnings from my end, of like storytelling and just making the right hiring decisions and working with the right people.
And I think both of them are really important. So you did
And
mention
and maybe one last thing, that money doesn't solve all of the problems.
all the problems.
Well, because the thing is, you still need to hire the right people. Right.
Yeah.
So the thing is, even if you like raised 10 million, if you don't hire the right people, it
Yeah.
will not work out. But it's a bit of like, if you raise 10 million, you also have better signal that you're like a legit company. You know what I mean? Like if you raise money from the right VCs, this is also a strong signal, so you attract better talent.
Yeah, money at least attracts the right talent. And you did mention about a bad hire earlier in the sales. We don't have
Multiple. Multiple. But all like, I wouldn't classify them as bad. Like, they're not bad people.
yeah, yeah,
They're like good people, and the person that is responsible for these decisions is me, or like is me and Stefan, because we made the decision to hire these people. So it was like more a misjudgment on our end. They weren't the person that we needed in this particular situation in order to get to do the job that we wanted.
and so post that experience, have you changed certain things about what you look
But
for and
yeah,
how you judge?
on the hiring process, I think we changed things quite drastically. So we used to do normal process of first interview, second interview, take home assignment, system design, and then like get to meet the team. And problem there was just took way too long. And we lost actually like talent of like having like a 6-week process, and time is everything, especially at a startup, right? Like speed is our biggest advantage. Mm. And now what we do is one call, max two, only the founders to like check the vibe. And then we invite people for work trials. And these work trials are paid, and are compensated. And then we try to get them as quickly as possible, like usually within a week, for example, into the office and have them work with us for like 3 days. And then during these like 2 to 3 days, the plan is, okay, you come in, you get like, we onboard you for 2 hours of like, this is the problem, scoping session of like, this is what we need to do. Then the person goes out and scopes, presents to us, and then starts to execute. And during this process, we basically check critical thinking. How do you structure your thoughts? How can you explain it, right? Can you actually understand the problem? And then execution part of like, how quickly do you ship, right? And then also once you executed, can you explain what you've done? Right. And this is like what you used to try to do with like take-home assignments and like system designs and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, you're already meeting the entire team and you're like, you need to work with us together during that like work trial part. So that has been an incredible improvement and actually like helps a lot with like understanding how people think and so on. And then we also hire more younger people now than what we used to. I think we yeah, we just hire because and the reason is actually somewhat simple. We've built up a lot of experience that we can actually like lead and guide better. And then the question is like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for someone who has a lot of energy, a lot of creativity, and in particular with like new situations like AI, for example? No one has worked, like, yes, there are some people that have worked a long time in AI, but there's like so much new stuff coming out. So the thing is, the type of person that you actually need is just someone that stays really on top of things, is aware, is super hungry, and like soaks up this entire knowledge, right? So, and when I say younger, I mean, we're talking like 20s. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Way past that.
I mean, to be
But I
honest,
know what you mean.
I thought about it. I was like, if I'm like in like 4 years, or 5 years, sold the company, everything's fine, but maybe looking for a job, maybe not looking for a new job. I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna be like, like
Unemployable.
maybe I might not even qualify anymore, like, but it could be, it could be. Yeah, I was featured in a Business Insider article about like hiring, and a lot of hate. It was so funny. It was like, oh, you don't pay the people. I was like, we literally said we paid them. And I was like, oh, Elon run company, or like Elon infused company. And of course you exploit them for work, and you can only hire people that don't have a job anymore. I was like, guys, let's all take a breather here. You know what I mean? Like if someone is actively looking, they will take a work trial. You know what I mean? Like, what does this mean that using up the PTO? You're looking to switch jobs. You know what I mean? Like, but like it was quite funny because it really like upset a lot of people. And I also understand it, but it's like in our situation, speed is everything, right? And that the general hiring process for a corporate is different than from a startup 100%. But also the persona that you attract for a corporate and the type of skills that you need are completely different from what you need for a startup. So the thing is, of course, we need to adjust our type of hiring to actually like serve our needs.
Yeah,
Period.
of course. It doesn't have to work for everyone. It just has to work for the people you want to hire. Yeah. Best hire you've made at BlueAlpha. What did you see that others missed?
Everyone is a great hire that we currently have. They're all incredible. No, it's true. I think everyone that currently works with us is exceptional in the area that they work and the topic and the responsibility, like the topic that they cover. So, and I think it's unfair to say like one is better than the other because they're all exceptional in like their job.
Yeah, I think it's a bad question as well. Who asks?
I mean, especially like ultimately you potentially throw someone on the bus, yeah.
Worst money you've spent on the business so far?
The worst money that
Yeah.
we're a German run company, so we have very efficient capital allocation. So there's actually, I mean, ultimately it's higher that you spend too much money on that you unfortunately had to part ways, you know? But I think we don't splurge on things that are unnecessary. Yeah.
And so being a German founder, are you a Jira shop or a linear shop or a GitHub issues shop?
We're a linear shop.
Linear shop.
We're a linear Excalibur shop. Yes, that's where we are.
And
And
tool you can't, sorry?
one tool we can't live without,
Yeah.
Claude.
I think I need to cross this answer off now.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah. I mean, so our stack is, obviously Claude, everything Notion, right? Then we use
Yeah.
Linear and Excalibur. Excalibur is it's like almost a board, where
Whiteboard.
you can whiteboarding session. A whiteboard as well. We also we love to draw on whiteboards, but obviously it's not a stack. That's like a
Are you guys
physical
all
thing.
fully on site or you have people?
This was also one of the. We're only hiring on site now. So this was also one of the learnings. We used to do remote, and we still have people that work remote, but we have worked with them personally before, for example, at Tesla. So there's
Right.
like this trust that has been built. And we
Right.
would also, especially at this current stage, everyone needs to be on site because decisions are just being made so fast that you need to be present. In the future, me and Stefan are both like very remote friendly, and we're also like very hybrid friendly. Like the thing is, not everyone works 5 days a week in the office. It's just that if you have to be in, you can
Yeah.
be in, and you cannot be in if you sit somewhere else in the world or like even a different state. Yeah.
A book that changed how you think about data marketing or building.
Oh, I forgot the name of it.
Mm.
1 second.
Yeah, we'll chop that bit out.
um,
Or maybe leave it.
Building hard. 1 second. The hard thing about like hard things, exactly, from
Yeah. The hard thing about hard things.
The hard thing about hard things from Ben Horowitz. Exactly. There you
It's
go.
probably the easiest book to remember.
Yeah.
Because
But to be
the
honest,
title is hard.
I have my AI agent now, and every book that I want them to read, I just feed to Klaus, and then Klaus like just perfectly summarizes me to every question that I have. I outsource the book reading.
Interesting. I kind of like the stories. And I think at least I learn better when I have, contextual stories around a lesson. But yeah, AI has made things easy to learn for sure. That was it. Where can people find you and know more about you? Do you want to share anything around hiring or fundraising or any other topic for BlueAlpha that you want to put
No. Well,
out?
you can find us on BlueAlpha.ai. My LinkedIn is Peter Grafe, how you would say it in English. We're also on X, but we're not that public on X. And we're hiring for a go-to-market engineer to actually like perfect the system even further. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was great.
No, thanks for joining me today. And yeah, it was a fun chat. Likewise, enjoyed. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. See you in the next episode.